What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Victory Life Legacy Spotlight. Today, I have a unique woman, a person that I've grown to admire and mentor. I've known her family for quite some time, and she's someone that's making an impact in the world of mental health and mental health with athletes. We have none other than Kailyn Slade in the building today. How you doing, Kailyn?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, man. I'm honored to have you on, especially being a family that you're a part of, and you're a shining star too. We're going to talk a lot about all of that, so we can make sure, as they say, give you your flowers, but also make sure we talk about you in particular and all the great things you're doing here in Northern Virginia. But before we talk about your current status in the mental health world and your new practice and all the stuff you're doing prior to that, I want to start the foundation. I want to go back to where it all started because I know your brother, Ricky Slade, who was a phenomenal, one of the best running backs in Virginia high school league history and Prince William County history. Your mom and dad have been big supporters of my businesses. And you also have another sister, right? That was an athlete as well, right? But talk about where it all started. What do you remember growing up? Where'd you grow up and your childhood? Because obviously someone successful as yourself comes from a great family. Tell us about that.
Well, I've grown up in Woodbridge my whole life, basically. I mean, I lived in DC for about 4 years. That's where my dad's from, but my mom's from Fairfax County. So we've lived in Woodbridge since I was 4 in the same house. Like, we never moved. Once we moved there, we stayed. So they've been there for like 24 years. But my mom's side of the family always played soccer. Like, my grandparents played soccer until until like their 40s, probably older. And they like coached, and everybody was just kind of an athlete on that side of the family. My mom ran track, never really played soccer. Funny thing is, my parents were not huge athletes, which people think is crazy. So maybe it skipped a generation. And my dad never really, I think he played some sports here and there, but he grew up in the city, so it wasn't, organized sports weren't really a thing. But when I turned 4, my mom just put me in soccer. I did gymnastics for a bit too, but fun fact is I was really big when I was little. What? So I'm really tiny now. I'm only 5 feet, but I have been 5 feet since I was 9 years old. So I was always a bit too big to be a gymnast. So I just started playing soccer at 4, and I never stopped. I never played any other sport, just soccer.
That's crazy. I first of all of that was a lot because I think I knew your parents were athletes, but I still find that irregular because you were phenomenal. I don't know about a lot about your sister, but I know about Ricky. I spent a lot of Friday nights watching him break records. And then your dad coaches. I mean, he coached for a while. He coached for a long time with me a few years, as well as he's coached after I left his organization, and he went on to coach other places. And he knows a lot about sports. So the fact that your mom and dad are just non-athletes is crazy. But at the same time, they did a great job producing great kids who are also great athletes.
Yeah. My dad likes to take the all of the kind of blame for it, or I guess, what do you call it? Like, it's all him because my sister is my half sister. We all have the same dad, but she was a great athlete too. She probably still holds records at Woodbridge High School. She's like player of the year, like also a phenomenal athlete.
What did she play?
She played soccer, but what she was really good at was track.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. She's really fast.
That's crazy. So let's get a little personal though. Talk about your mom and dad, like, because when I see them on social media, Instagram and Facebook, they're funny. It's like funny videos and they take great pictures together. They're very loving. But I've been around your dad on a personal note, and I know he has a temper. And I know he's yeah. I know he's no nonsense. How was it like, them raising you guys, because I know you as a professional. I kind of mentor you when I can, but I didn't know you growing up. I'm older than you. So talk about like childhood structure, funny moments, like discipline, because it's always cool to hear about parents from a different perspective when we don't know them like you guys do.
That's a good question. Well, so I'm the good kid. So I never did anything wrong. So my perspective of my dad is different from everybody else because I was never in trouble. So I didn't test him because I was like, why would you want to get in trouble? That just doesn't make sense in my mind. Like, why would you do something wrong to get in trouble? That just sounds terrible. I'm not going to do that. But my brother and sister, on the other hand, they'll test this gangster anytime they want, or anytime they're going to test it. Like, so my dad was just no nonsense. So like, if you did something wrong, he was going to tell you about it and you just weren't going to do it again. And if you were going to do it again, you just run that consequence of getting in trouble or getting yelled at. The only time my dad would get annoyed of me is if I was playing a bad game, or like if I wasn't doing what he wanted me to be doing, then he would start yelling from the sidelines.
Really?
But that got knocked out quick because one of my coaches when I was young basically put him in his place and yelled at him was like, "You're done. You get off the field." So ever since that game, he would sit in the corner at my games with his headphones in and not say anything until I got older. When I was in college, my mom said he would like say things in the stands like, you should have got that. Or, why is she playing like this? And Ricky would be texting my mom like, was he always like this? Her mom's like, yes. But when my parents were young, my parents are really young, so they had us young. Mm-hmm. My mom had me when she was like 20. Wow. My dad had my sister when he was 19 or 18. Yeah. So, and my sister is 33, about to be 34. Wow. So she got like the brunt of young daddy and young mommy, like acting a fool at the games, cussing people out, or just yelling, getting kicked out, stuff like that. But they got better as I came up because I played in a more prestigious area. I played in McLean. So, whoa. Yeah.
You play with the money.
Yeah.
You play with the money, man. Yeah. It's money. It's old money. Great Falls and McLean, it's money. Like we talking, they got money to burn out there. I was ignorant to McLean until I started coaching the Fairfax County Basketball Travel League, and I learned very quickly about their money. It's crazy. So, Kailyn, with that being said, soccer is a unique sport, to be very blunt and frank. In the African American community, it's football, basketball, track, then maybe baseball, sports like soccer, field hockey, lacrosse. We will play it, and many times we can excel in it, but it's not something, especially in Woodbridge and the eastern side of the county. You're talking about Dumfries, Dale City, Woodbridge. Soccer in Northern Virginia is huge, but not with our culture.
Right.
And you talk about playing in McLean, great area, great community, but it's not as diverse as Prince William. How was that? Like, did you ever, I don't mean that in a negative way. And when I say how was it, positive, negative experience, what was it like? Because we know about now over the last several years, we've seen what the Williams sisters have done in Tiger Woods, breaking those color barriers in predominantly dominated white sports. Soccer is a similar sport where it's very diverse across the globe, but in America, especially in urban areas like Woodbridge, that's not the case. So how was it for you?
That's a good question. It was hard. So when I first started playing, I played in Prince William County, and Prince William County has always kind of been diverse. So I always had, like, my first travel team, I always had a couple Black girls on my team. So there was always there's probably 4, 5, 6 Black girls on my team when I played for Prince William County. It didn't really hit me until I moved to Braddock Road. So I played for Prince William County until I was like U12, and then the team wasn't really good anymore. So we moved to Braddock Road, which was the better team at the time. And there was only one Black girl on that team. So I was one of 2 Black girls on that entire team. And I think that's where I started, people start to ask you different questions, like questions about your hair, or I started getting more fouls than other people. That's when my dad would say things like, "It's just the skin you win, Kay. It's just the skin you win." And I would be like, "Oh my God, please stop." Yeah. So that's, or like, why do you have to wear suntan lotion? Like, you don't get burnt, you're Black, just like things like that. Or usually as a Black player, we're fast, you would think, Black people are mostly fast. So you either get put as a forward or a defender. But I was a midfielder, which not a lot of Black people play because you're fast. They think they're just going to run up top or run in the back to defend the goal. So it was fine at Braddock Road. I loved my team at Braddock Road. When I went to McLean, though, I played at McLean my last, I tore my ACL my junior year. It's probably like my sophomore to senior year I played for McLean. That's where I really noticed it because there was one other Black girl, Casey Mann, Charles Mann's daughter, who played for the Redskins.
Yeah. I remember Charles Mann, great player.
Right. So both of his daughters played soccer. So the oldest played against my sister and the youngest I played with. But my coach was Black at McLean. And that was the first time I'd ever been coached by a Black coach. And I loved him, Clyde. And he always, I think when I first tried out, he's like, it'll be nice to have something other than a blonde ponytail running around. So I think I just got used to it. When I went to McLean, I was like, I'm just here because I'm trying to get a scholarship and play in college. They already had their cliques. It was already kind of a known thing. It's just always been that way. In college, it was the best though, because my freshman year, there was 3 older girls that were Black. They were seniors, and I love them all dearly even to this day. So they made my experience it was just good. But overall, it's growing in the Black community. One of my friends down at VCU, she has a training program where it's all for Black athletes. And she had a Black player showcase a couple months ago that I went and spoke at. And that was amazing to see only Black players on the field. I'd never seen that before, but it was also different. Because me and my mom walked in and my mom was like, oh, wait, there's only Black people here. And I was like, we felt like this is crazy. You would never see that, but it was amazing.
I want to talk really quickly. I want to ask you about it because I'm very, very familiar with basketball and football recruiting, and even to some degree wrestling and a few other sports. Soccer is a huge sport globally, and it's, as you mentioned, it's growing every year. Women and men's soccer, obviously the women's USA soccer team is legendary. They've been great for years, but at the same time, I will be the last one or the first one to tell you, I can't tell you how recruiting works. I know UNC and UVA, I know about, some of the ACC schools and the programs. But at the same time, I couldn't tell you how recruiting works, rankings, offers, revenue. So just a little bit. We don't want to get too much into it because this is not just a sports show, but at the same time, just go back to your recruitment and how that works. Because you mentioned, because I do know my oldest daughter was a very, very good volleyball player. And I know I've learned sports like volleyball and soccer and even baseball, your club team helps tremendously.
Yep.
So again, just tell us about how that worked with you when you look back on your recruitment and what that meant and, how it came about, schools and whatnot.
Yeah, my recruiting was so different back then because that was 10 years ago. I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary of.
Wow. What? Crazy. I remember you played in high school. You just really going to make me feel that old tonight.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, I feel old too about my 10 years.
Yeah, but I remember when you were playing at Woodbridge. I'm really tripping. Go ahead. I'm sorry. This is crazy.
It's okay. So yeah, it's been 10 years. So it's obviously so different because there was social media, but no one was recruiting wasn't a thing on social media. So your club team is it's all about your club team for when it comes to mostly, not necessarily baseball, but soccer and field hockey. Your club team is where the college coaches are going to come see you because that's where you go to showcase tournaments. So there's different leagues, which has changed over the years. But when I was playing, it first was called the Red Bull League, but now it's ECNL. Okay. And that was the league where they would hold all the big tournaments, which is where all the college coaches would go. But so my sophomore year, I think, is when you can start you could start emailing coaches to come see you play, but they can email you back. And then junior year is when you can talk back and forth. My recruitment, I was terrible in front of coaches. If I got to a game and they would line up on the side, I was done for. I'm too nervous. I'm like, no. So I got recruited at practice actually because I didn't know they were there.
Mm.
But I tore my ACL my junior year of high school, so my recruitment was a little bit different. But I had a couple like mid-major schools like VCU, Radford, Stony Brook. Radford offered me a full ride, and I turned it down because I know, which people are like, do you know what you're doing? And I'm like, I couldn't see myself at Radford.
But that's important. That's important.
Yeah. Right. VC gave me 60%, which is good for a soccer player because the way it works is each team gets basically 14 scholarships, and then they have to kind of disperse that amongst the team with however they'd like. Whereas like volleyball and basketball, that's everybody gets a free ride because that's your 14 people right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good point.
And I think that's the difference that people don't realize when they play like soccer or baseball, and they're like, I want to get a full ride to this school. And I'm like, that's really hard to do in a sport like that because there's no funding for a women's sport, especially. They're not going to give you all these full rides. That's just not what they do.
Yeah. I did not know that.
Nobody does.
And you turned down Radford. Did you get backlash? Because when people, they've never been recruited or they think they know, even if they have never been to college, they think they know where you should go. Yeah. Did you get backlash from colleagues, not colleagues, but friends at school, your parents, anybody? Did anybody say anything? Or
I think people were just like, do you realize what you're doing? Like, you're turning down your college paid for. But I just knew that if I went there, it was not, there's nothing there at Radford. I just didn't think that I was going to like it. I was like, it was a no. In hindsight, maybe I should have went and like visited school and done all these things, but I was like, it's a no-go for me.
You didn't visit? You didn't take the visit?
Nope.
Yeah. So, you already know where I went to, but just a reminder, I went to Virginia Tech, and Radford is like our sister school. Right. They're only 20 miles from us. So we do a lot of stuff together. But I will say this, and we're getting ready to transition and segue into VCU now after I say this, but it's really about, where you're comfortable. My sister did 2 years at VCU before transferring back home to the Tidewood area. I visited VCU and ODU a lot. I love both schools. But being from Hampton and Newport News, when I went on my recruiting visits, Virginia Tech was for me. Now, for some people, no way. You up in the mountains, it's cold, agriculture type town. But, for me in the Berg, it was wonderful. VCU, I love to visit, but the city feel didn't resonate with me. Even though I love to go down there and party, it's a great school. It's really grown a lot. Like, it's actually a phenomenal university. I just wish they got a football team.
Yeah.
But overall, the colors, that dining hall I always go to, I forgot the name of it.
Schaefer.
The one with, yeah, Schaefer. Yeah, man. I know about VCU, but it's good you went where you were comfortable. And speaking of that, talk about your college life and your career there. Like, you had a great career. I followed it vicariously through your parents. So I would see the pictures and see you out there, the freeze frames, you kicking the ball and running around. But how was it? Because Prince William's diverse, but VCU, when I used to take kids on college tours, at the time they were 46% Black. And it's in a location where you're not that far. You're in the middle of the state. You're not that far from other universities, including Virginia State and Virginia Union. And there's a lot to do, but they also have great academics. But just talk about all that in one for you. What was your experiences like at VCU?
Yeah, initially when I first went down to VCU, I was like, I don't know if I like the city feel. Like, I didn't think that I would like it, but it was like close enough to home. I originally really liked my coaches when I went there. It was a husband and a wife, Tim and Tiff. They now coach at UCF. So I went. But my college career was not as pretty as everybody would assume looking in, from the outside looking in. So like I said before, I tore my ACL my junior year of high school. But I didn't have surgery until like the summer before my senior year. So then I was basically like rehabbing the whole year before I went to VCU.
Let me ask, why was that? Why'd you wait?
So, because originally when I got my first opinion, they were like, I think you'll be fine. Like, you don't need to have surgery. It'll just heal on its own. basically, because it was a partial tear initially.
Hmm.
My mom's like, no, that just doesn't sound right. Like, and we had Kaiser at the time. My mom's like, we're done. Like, switch the whole insurance. Literally, like we're done with these people. We're going to get a second opinion. So we went to Dr. Nunziata, who I love. He was a doctor for like the Redskins at the time.
I know. Yeah, he was very well known.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's very well known and respected, especially for those injuries.
Yes, and he's a gem, like such a doll. And when we saw him, he was like, you need surgery. Like, you can't, if you were to play on this, you would blow your whole knee out.
Were you in pain like throughout? Like, or you just kind of were walking around and chilling? Like, were you in pain?
I had already had a torn meniscus. I'd been playing on a torn meniscus probably for like a year because it was just minor. And then when I tore my ACL, I felt that, and my knee was swollen, but like a torn ACL, you can still like walk. I could still run straight.
Yeah, you can't cut.
So no, I wasn't in pain. I was like, I'm good. Until I were to start to cut or something, and my knee would be like, no.
Oh, man.
So that's why I waited, because I had to get a second opinion. That took a few months. Then, you got to schedule the surgery. That took some months. So I didn't get my surgery till it was like July, the end of July. And then I was rehabbing like all of my senior year. So when I got to VCU, I was not the player that I was prior to tearing my ACL. Like, I wasn't fit enough. People don't understand the difference between like being fit as like a club soccer player versus being fit as a college soccer player. Like, I was not prepared mentally or physically for what I was about to put my mind and my body through for the next 4 years. And nobody is, which is why I started the business now. And I like to talk to people about it because nobody prepares you for it. So when I got there, I wasn't fit. I like didn't pass my fitness test. I was like not doing well on the field. I didn't feel myself. I didn't even like practice my freshman year. Like, they wouldn't even put me on the field at practice. So it was terrible. So I was like, I like called my parents and I was like, I don't know if I could do this. Like, this is actually like terrible. But I was like, you know what? No, like, I'm going to work my ass off, excuse my language, just to prove them wrong. Cause I was like, okay, clearly they don't like me. They didn't play me. So I literally worked so hard the whole season. I didn't travel my freshman year until the last tournament, the A10 tournament, the conference tournament. I worked my ass off to travel. So I traveled that tournament. And then after the season, they basically told me like, oh, well, we think you should transfer because essentially you're not good enough to play at VCU. Like, we don't think you're good enough to stay on this team. So I'm like, right. So I'm like, I guess I'm going to transfer. Like, and they're like, I mean, if you could prove to us why you think you should stay on this team, we'll consider it. So I like bawled my eyes out. I remember I talked to one of the seniors. Her name's Bree White. She went to Hilton High School. She came to my dorm and we sat there and I like wrote this 2-page paper on like why I think I should be on the team. I went back in to have a meeting with my coaches. I gave them all a copy of it. And I basically was like, these are the reasons why I should be on this team, A, B, C, D, and E. Boom. I stayed on the team. And then they left right after that. After they put me through all of that, they left VCU and went to UCF.
It's a business. It's a business.
It is a business.
It's a business. No matter the sport, no matter the college. It's a business.
Yeah. I firmly believe in that. So we got a new coach. Her name was Lindsay. I remember the first email she sent, it was all about fitness. Like, this is what I'm coming in and expecting. People were dropping off like flies left and right. People quitting.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So she came in, we had the worst fitness test I've ever had in my life. It was called the YBMI, You Better Make It. And we had to run, the manual. I like that. People were throwing up, peeing their pants, like dying.
Whoa.
Yes, it was miserable. So we finished the test. We're like thinking we're okay. We didn't make the times. And Lindsay's like, these scores are awful. Like, basically the audacity of y'all to think you're doing well. And we're like, well, shit. Like, we thought we did okay. No. So essentially we went down to school early. So we did preseason. So like basically like July 4th weekend, you would go down, we would have captain's practice until preseason started in August. So I remember I came back my sophomore year and I was like basically just balling out all through preseason. Everyone's like, damn, what happened to Kay? Like, she's so good. Like, who is this person basically? And my friend Emma was like, she's always been good. She was just hurt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, literally. So my sophomore year, I became like the spark player. Like I would come off the bench halfway through each half. And I was just like the player that came on and like brought the energy up on the field. And then I just kept working really hard, like worked really hard on my fitness, like, and just said, so then I ended up starting my junior and senior year and I was a captain and just like super, like really well respected on the field. Academically, my freshman year, I had struggles too, because I thought I wanted to be a business major. No. Econ whooped my ass twice. Failed it the first time because I was in it with my best friend and all we did was laugh the whole time. Second time I took it, I was like, I need to withdraw from this class. Like, I can't take it. And my coach is like, we're not quitters. You're not going to give up on this class. So I had to take it, failed it. And that's when I was like, you know what? I'm going to go into social work. And then it just.
And well, VCU, first of all, is state and, nationwide renowned and respected for their social work program. I mean, most of when I used to do foster care and adoption, all our trainers for continuing education and a lot of the presentations were from VCU, or they were paid through VCU, they were with the VCU program. It's amazing, that program. So it worked out for you.
Yeah, it's a great program. Loved it more than my master's program. It was so good.
Wow. So yeah, and you got your master's from George Mason, correct? What was your master's in? Social work as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And then now you have your LCSW. How long have you had your LCSW?
Just a year. I just renewed after a year. So I got it January. I'll never forget it. It was January 6th, 2020 when they stormed the Capitol.
Oh, wow. Crazy thing. And for those watching, I'm showing all these acronyms. That means she's a licensed clinical social worker. And that is easily one of the toughest license to get. I'm an LPC, then you have LMFT, and there's other ones. So the LCSW, I had friends that took that exam and they talked about how difficult it was. So, and you're young and you're licensed. So shout out to you for getting that. I told you that before. I'm gonna tell you that every time, because that is the hard part, is getting to that mountaintop. Not that you're by any means done, but you're in a position to be licensed where you can go anywhere, at least, get licensed in another state, but that puts you in a position to open doors and do things throughout our state, which is huge. When you were going through the process, of playing sports and, getting you switched to social work, did you ever see yourself? I know you're young and you're still ascending towards you want to be. We're going to talk about your practice and the stuff you're doing in Fairfax County as well, but sometimes it's cool to kind of like stop and look back and look how far you come. Like we joked earlier how it was 10 years ago when you were being recruited, right? And now you're in a situation where you are called upon to assess and suicide prevention and crisis intervention, crisis stabilization, and you and I both, we deal with some challenging cases, the stuff you see on Fox 5. Did you ever see yourself, right? Like in this position where like, I am an expert in this and this is what I do. Or did you ever see yourself when you were at VCU, hanging out in the streets of Richmond, and you were going to be doing what you're doing now?
No. I thought I was going to be like a VP of a huge company making like all this money with like my own office. This is not. And then when I went to social work, I always knew I wanted to be a school social worker. I'll tell you that. When I went into social work, my goal was to be a school social worker because I had a friend.
Okay.
So I had a friend who I played soccer with, her mom, Chrissy Ferrari, shout out to her. She's like my mentor. She's always told me like, you'd be such a good social worker. You'd be such a good social worker, like before I even went to college. And she's a school social worker in Fairfax County and has been for 20 something years probably. So she's the reason why I went into social work and why I was like, I want to be a school social worker. Like that's what I want to do. But dope. No, I didn't think so.
Yeah, because respectfully, I love what I do, and I know you love what you do, but when I'm at places and people hear what I do, they're like, wow, that's really cool. But then they almost say, you good? Because, you know, I joke about how many times you're in the school, but you paid your dues. You dealt with people who are unstable or on the brink of making a bad decision or trying to keep them stable. We don't have a tool belt other than our clinical skills. We don't have tasers and guns. We have the manila folders and our assessment tools. This is a very challenging field. We work in mental health. We're clinicians, and you compete against some of the best soccer players in the country, starting off when you were young playing club. But this is a different level of competition. You're talking about, you make important decisions and recommendations. I want everybody watching this to know that. And you have to be sharp. In your line of work, Kailyn, you can't have a bad day.
Mm-mm.
So do you love what you do? Do you enjoy it?
Yes. If I didn't love what I do, I wouldn't do it. Trust me. I tell my students that all the time. They're like, you probably make so much money doing this. And after I cackle for 5 minutes, no. I do this because I love to do it.
Mm-hmm. Do you make the mistake I do sometimes? My wife and my friends joke me because even when we watch television, I'll be watching something or we be somewhere. I'm like, yo, my man or old girl, he's undiagnosed, or it's the see you nodded, or the gift and the curse where we worked a long day and it's been a long week and we just want to chill. And you get a text, hey man, you got a minute? I'm dealing. So you get that as well. It's almost the gift and the curse. It's almost like a person who is an Avenger or who has that power.
Mm.
We're always on call, even in our leisure time.
Oh,
You
yes.
you find that as well?
My family, everybody comes to me for everything. And if I'm having a bad day, the world's going to end because
Mhm.
Lord forgive me if I have a bad day. But I don't have bad days. And even if I do, you never know it because I still got to show up for my kids and my clients. So,
Yeah, I know you can't tell stories and things because we have the ethics and confidentiality. But just talk about before we get into your practice. You got your master's from Mason, and then you come back home, and you're working here in Fairfax County in Northern Virginia, a very big county, very diverse, but we serve a large population. What do you enjoy, not so much about the day to day, but what do you enjoy overall about your students and just let people know the kind of work you do because the school social worker title, we're going to talk about your practice, but the school social worker title, the role has changed over the last 15 years.
yes.
They throw more and more on your plate and you're asked to do more within a condensed schedule. So
Mm-hmm.
just explain what that means because we know about school counselors and we know about the assistant principals and the teachers and the teachers assistants and other departments within the Virginia educational system, but that school social worker one over the last decade, I've learned, I'm like, hey, I just saw you over at this school. Now you over here. Now you got to go over here and be part of this meeting. Just tell me what you do.
Yeah. Well, even before I was in the schools, I worked at the Keller Center, which I worked in their
Woo!
Partial Hospitalization Program. I interned there, and then I worked there for a couple of years, and then I went into their day school, their therapeutic day school.
Mhm.
So I worked. I mean, that those kids are all suicidal. Like it's basically like they're in the hospital. So I think that was like the crisis when I was like, this is literally life or death. Like my decisions are life or death. I either can let you go home tonight or I need to send you to the hospital. That is the decision
Mhm.
that's left on me as the clinician
Mhm.
at 24 years old.
Mm. Wow.
um, so I think that's where I really learned all of my like clinical everything because it was just so heightened. And I was working really closely with psychiatrists and I was doing family work, family therapy, individual therapy, and group therapy all in like one day.
Mm.
So, and it's a quick turnaround. So I think if I didn't work there, I wouldn't be where I am now because I learned all the medications and the diagnoses and just the crisis work. And I really learned to be quick on my feet. And then when I went over to the day school, that's when I really learned about the IEP process, like and how to write IEPs and how to write goals and I had to do all of that when I was in the day school. So when I went to Fairfax County Public Schools, I was kind of like, I've already been in the trenches. Like, this is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The school social worker does everything. So I work with, it's called the school-based ED, like emotional disability clinician. My caseload, I split with the school psychologist of all the kids who have emotional disabilities on their IEP, their individualized education plan. So I basically go to all of their IEP meetings. I deal with their families. I'm like their go-to person at school. I help make behavior plans for them. And in addition to that, I take care of if we have a food pantry at Fairfax High School. We contract with the person outside of it, but I just kind of do the logistics of it. We run groups, like small groups. I go into classrooms and run groups. I will do presentations if people need to the teachers, about crisis and how to access mental health resources. I do suicide screenings. So if a kid's feeling suicidal, I do that. We're the Cps Liaisons. So if anybody calls CPS in the school, they have to let me know, fill out a form. If CPS comes to the school, they have to come through me. I have to go get the kids. We do everything. The only thing we don't do is schedule classes.
Which sometimes they try to trick you into doing as well.
They try to do. I will look at schedules of my kids to make sure they're in the right classes, but I don't do that. We sit in meetings with families. If anybody goes to the hospital, they talk to the school social worker.
Mm-hmm.
You name it, we do it.
Yeah, and most importantly, on a day-to-day, you're saving lives because everything you just listed, each situation can sometimes take anywhere up to 45 minutes to 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I said the day-to-day because it's a lot. And I appreciate you. I know your colleagues do as well as your students, but I just wanted you to list that out just to verbalize it for, our viewers because it's a lot. And the thing about it is people see, especially when the school clinicians and school staff in general, oh, you guys get summers off, you get snow days and winter breaks. It's not what you think. I mean, first of all, before we dive into your next question, the clientele you and I work with for you in your setting, it's very, very unique because you have to expect the unexpected because it's school.
Yeah.
I'm community based. You're school where you're in the school and, obviously the Keller Center and other places are more intense, but the school, you have other factors such as bullying, social media, teenagers, their bodies and their minds are changing, other stuff going on as far as even something simplistic as a fire drill. And of course, our newest challenge, COVID-19.
Yep.
It's a lot. So shout out to you. I just wanted to make sure, we list that out because, we hear that term school social worker. Before we talk about your practice, when you look at the impact you've made so far, because again, I don't want to get into names, but what's some of the things you take pride in that some of the clients that some things we may not know that you help, for example, I remember years ago in the early 2000s, I developed a therapeutic recreational program at the Molinaire Shelter in Prince William in Manassas. Or, I came up with other programs or I've helped kids get their GED or going into the military, whatever it is. What are some of the things that you've done in your career so far? I know you're always moving forward and you're looking forward, but what are some of the things in 2000, this was a great time. I had 3 young ladies that went on to do this. Are there some highlights of your career that you just take pride in that you point to? That was a great success for all of us.
Yeah. I mean, I think the one things that I've seen the most was that when I was at Keller is when I was in the day school specifically is seeing them graduate and go back to their base school. So when kids come to the Keller school, they've basically been displaced from their base school because it's too challenging for them. They can't make it there. So I used to love when I would see a kid. I had one kid who I had in PHP and then came over to the day school, then left, then came back to the day school and then like transition back to like their base school after everything that they had been through. And I was kind of there just along the way for their whole experience. And I think that's like the best thing to see. I just love seeing my clients like come to me with a goal, and you see them at their worst. Like they're at their worst. Like when you're in PHP, you're like down bad, like it's life or death. To see them like go back into the community, go back to their school, and just kind of achieve all of the goals that they set out that they wanted to do. And you're just there by their side to help them the whole time. Yeah,
just for everybody watching, it's just the acronyms, because in our field we use a lot of acronyms. What does PHP mean for everybody watching?
Partial Hospitalization Program.
Yeah, I know that, but I just want to make sure people are like, oh, PHP. But no, that's great. That's great. Now, something that's even, should I say, more exciting. In addition to all you do as a school social worker, you have now created a practice of your own, which I am excited about because I'm sharing it. And this is what motivated me to do your legacy spotlight. You have a practice of your own, which I think is huge, especially since COVID-19, because with COVID-19 is exposed, even in addition to the epidemic with COVID, we have a mental health epidemic. We have a mental health crisis, and it's affecting not just the middle class or lower middle class. It's affecting everybody, especially the athletes. Tell everybody the name of your practice, and let's talk about that. Because this is great. This is something unique. No, yes. Go ahead.
The name of my practice is Mindful Athletes. It is a practice that it's targeting basically athletes. I see people who are not athletes, but my target audience is athletes. I really want to focus on, especially like youth, like the transition of like the recruiting process and just like being like a high school student athlete as you're transitioning into a college athlete. I love seeing college athletes as well, but I think the part that nobody is focusing on is the small transition of going from a high school senior where you're like, you're the shit. You got everything you ever wanted. Like I'm on top of the world. And then you get to college and they're like, yeah, we don't care what you did before. You're nothing now. You're back at the bottom. And you're like, wait. What? That's the part that nobody talks about. And that's kind of what I love to talk about that. And I love to like prepare athletes for it and kind of talk them through that transition.
And to your point, it happens even from college to pro. If you're blessed to go pro, and you go in pro baseball, soccer, football, basketball, that includes going overseas or playing in adult leagues. It is a transition. And I'm glad you started this because, full disclosure, I went through a depression when my career ended. And a lot of us, men and women, we go through it because when you begin to ascend towards the top and you're all state, all region, or you're being interviewed, and at your respective school, you are a household name, or you're on a team that won a championship, and then you go away and they recruited you hard. Next thing you know, you're starting from the bottom. And most importantly, with your practice, Mindful Athletes, Kailyn, you've been through it with the injury, and you were told to leave. I mean, and you had to be resilient and fight back. But more importantly, about these feelings and symptoms that, because men and women athletes are told you can't speak on this vulnerability or this weakness. Open up a little bit about that. I saw you. Yeah, I see you nodding. What do you mean? What do we mean by that?
I mean, I think yes. So the thing that is frustrating for me as an athlete, and especially when I went to college, is where I noticed it more, is that nobody talks about feelings. Like you said earlier in the podcast, it is a business. Like you literally wake up, report to work. If you're not performing at work, you don't get the compensation or you get fired, which is essentially what is in sports. Like you show up at work, if you're not doing what they ask you to do, you're kicked to the curb and the next one's coming in to take your spot and they have forgotten about you and they don't care. That's the part where the kids or everybody doesn't realize, like, whoa. Through the whole recruiting process, you were my best friend. You were laying out the red carpet. But now that you have me, I'm nothing. Well, yeah, because it's a business. It's money. That's their job too. The coaches got to feed their families. So
no, you're right. And then I've seen it here. We saw Kevin Love that played with LeBron with the Cavaliers came out. There have been a lot of young men or older men have come out. I find it interesting, and I'm not just saying this because you're on here, but since you are here, I can say it. Even people such as someone like Osaka, the famous tennis player, who came out and struggled. And I feel like for women, even though men get scrutinized, for women, it's double because it's almost like, oh, well, you're being weak, or what do you expect? She's a female.
Mhm.
Um, when you hear those terms, especially with your practice and what you're trying to do, because you work with both young men and women and young adults as well, but with your practice, when you hear that, how does that make you feel when you hear about, like, toughen up, or she just feeling sorry for herself, or how you depressed and anxious, but you just did a photo shoot? When you hear that, what's your response?
Oh, it's really fun. It's like the same thing with Simone Biles when she had to take herself out of the Olympics. I respect all of them for speaking up. It's infuriating because the thing with mental health is it's different than, like, if you break your leg, you can look on an x-ray and say, oh yeah, it's broken, this is what we're going to do to fix it. Mental health doesn't work like that. Like, you cannot look at someone and be like, dang, they have depression, like, it's all words. We're just going off of people's words. So I feel like if someone comes to you and says, like, hey, this prestigious athlete like Osaka or Simone Biles is saying, like, I'm taking myself out of the Olympics because I cannot handle it right now. Why would they do that if it wasn't real? And for us outsiders, this is what I hate about Twitter. People just on there, just going on people, just saying all these awful things from your couch, and they have no idea what it's like to be an athlete, especially in today's society. They have no idea. It's hard.
I agree.
It's really hard.
I agree, because I joked, you played during the social media world, and it's increased since then. I did not have that, and I thank God I didn't. I love it now because I'm old enough and mature enough to handle it. But that scrutiny from, as you mentioned, Twitter, because Twitter is the mecca of cesspools and opinions. It's rough, and I try to empathize, but then again, I'm in the field. I'm a clinician. Um, with mindful athletes, what are some of the things you have coming up in 2022, and what are some of your future, not to give away all your secrets and stuff, but what are some of your things you have coming up, or plans for? Because I think this is something very unique, because a lot of times, about Ron Artest or Meta World Peace, who was seeing a therapist to deal with his past trauma. You know about guys like Brandon Marshall, who speaks out about mental health. There are a lot, and I'm glad more people are coming forward. But it's still a long list of people, from superstardom all the way to local, minuscule level, where we need to make sure that they're helped. What are some of the things you plan to do with your practice to really raise awareness, and also to help this cause and help address it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm still building it and building it every day. I think I just want to start speaking more.
Okay.
And what I really loved when I was coaching is being a role model for the girls. So I coached soccer for like 4 or 5 years in Vienna. And my favorite part about coaching was not like the coaching of the soccer and winning games, like whatever. I loved like being there for the girls. Like when they came to practice, I like set aside time for them to like talk about their day and, really getting to know the girls outside of being soccer players. And just like, they were always like, Coach Kailyn, you're so cool. You're so chill, because it's more than just playing soccer. Like, I can yell and scream at you all day, but like, you have to figure out what's going on with your players. You have to get to know them. And that's kind of what I really want to start talking about, is just like educating people, like coaches, players, like going out to youth organizations and saying like, hey, can I speak to your coaches, or would you be up if I talk to your players about this, so they can really learn how to coach. It's like, they say like gentle parenting, maybe like, I don't want to call it gentle coaching, but just being more aware of humans. Like, we are human beings. We are not just robots that are here to hit a baseball, run a football, or kick a soccer ball.
Mm-hmm.
Like, get to know your players, look at their signs, look at the cues. If you're seeing them, you need to speak up about it or have a conversation with them. Don't just scream at them and kick them off the field. That's not helping. So I think just more education.
Yeah. I'm excited for you, man. I'm gonna make a recommendation to you right now for everyone to see and listen to. I think you should start a video blog, just Yeah, I see people doing that. Maybe not a podcast, but upload a video of just little tidbits that athletes can just listen to or see every other day or something. Because I think you have the voice for it. I think you have the right insight. You have the perspective, and I think you'll be good. I think obviously you're a great listen because I'm interviewing you, and I can listen talk to you all day. But I think you have to use the technology to your advantage, and I think given your insight because again, when I think about it, I don't know any other practices that really focus on athletes. And we live in Northern Virginia, right outside of DC, where the metropolitan area, the DMV is huge. And a lot of people are focused on therapy, which is what you're doing, but it's the criteria for these athletes.
Mm,
It's different because again, like you mentioned, I mean, you were a D1 player and you went through adversity and you also experienced a great deal of success. Your family has. And with that, a lot of people your eyes were on you, and that's pressure and
yeah.
that's hard. And we've seen more suicides and we've seen more cases of depression and self-medication. So we need to continue to address this together. But I will be one of your biggest cheerleaders after your parents.
Yeah. I know our mom's like,
So,
when is the podcast? Can I just like listen in on the side? I'm like, no.
I love your mom and I love your dad, man. They're great people, man. I love them all, man. Your brother and everybody. Um, just a few more and then we're gonna wrap up. But um, when you talk about mindful athletes, how can people connect with you? Email, do you have a social media account? How can I refer? How can I look in? How can I get my son, my daughter? I mean, because I already have a vision where I'm going to have you speak to my teams because I have an AU organization, but that's for something else. But other people watching this, how can they find out about mindful athletes?
I do have an Instagram actually. It's new. It is at Mindful Athletes LLC. I also have a website, mindfulathletes.org. I also have a Psychology Today page.
Yes.
It's just my name, Kailyn Slade. So you can reach out on any of those platforms, DM, email, call, whatever. So any of those is good.
That's awesome. So we're at the point in the show where we wrap up, and I love this part because um, I've interviewed even when I did a column for Rivals in 247 Sports. I've interviewed some great people, athletes, non-athletes, cancer survivors, superintendents, and I love the final thought moment. This is the Victory Life final thought moment. I want you to share your final thoughts, Kailyn, on not so much your practice, but just what it for the young ladies and even the young men that are going to see this, that have a good platform. What advice and feedback and insight do you have for them to be successful? And how can they overcome their adversity? Because you've experienced your fair share of adversity. You help people problem solve and resolve conflict and other techniques every day.
Yeah.
But just in your final words, it's a two-parter. What has life taught you so far in your
Mhm.
athletic and academic and professional experiences? What has it taught you so far? And what words of wisdom do you have for people watching this to overcome their adversity and get to their mountaintop?
So anybody that knows me knows that my favorite saying of all time, have it tattooed down my spine, is it is a feeling, it will pass with time. No feeling is forever. All feelings are fluid. They come and they go. And the last thing, you can't take anything personal. Nothing in this life you can take personal because other people's actions have nothing to do with you at the end of the day. So those are my two things. But it's a feeling, it'll pass. Like anybody that knows me, friends from college, they now live by that. Like my mom used to always say it to me. If I was like, Mommy, this didn't happen, she'd be like, Kailyn, it's a feeling, it'll pass. I live by that. I live by it.
I love it. I love that. I've never heard that. And I talked to you quite a bit. I've never heard that, but I will remember that. And it's going to be on this show. I love that. And it is a feeling. And you have given me and your viewers a great feeling because so many people are proud of you. When I posted you in the Victory Life hoodie, alerts. I had to turn my phone off.
Oh,
People are people are proud of you, man. That's a great thing, man. You're living your passion and you're living your purpose. And I can't wait to see mindful athletes take off, just like when I started Victory Life. It's great to have another fellow clinician in the game, a colleague like yourself, someone I've seen grow up, man. The Slade family is wonderful, more than a sports family, more than a sports family. And Mindful Athletes is going to be great. And I can't wait. Maybe we'll get you on one of our panels. But for those watching and supporting Victory Life and Kailyn Slade and Mindful Athletes and her practice, I want to say thank you. This has been another great episode of the Legacy Spotlight featuring Kailyn Slade. And I also want to tell you to make sure you support her, check her practice out, and also subscribe to our channel for more features and great experiences like this one. We can hear from other guests and features such as Kailyn Slade and others. So Victory Life, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on Twitter and Instagram. And Kailyn, I want to thank you again for jumping on. I know you've been busy saving the world like me today, meetings and assessments, but this has been great. And I want to thank everybody. Like I say every episode, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, make sure you leave a positive impact and you have a great legacy. Thank you to everyone for supporting us. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me on.